Thank you. All right. Welcome, everyone, to this second meeting of the Town Council's CIP work sessions. It is Wednesday, January 8th. The time is 6:32. Welcome, Brian. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. Please rise and join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Rob, you can just take it away.
That's great. Thank you. We've got department heads here tonight who are going to present to you the capital budget for next fiscal year. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going into great detail about this capital improvement program. I want to hit the highlights. I want to make sure that the council has a sense of what we've proposed changing that's a big deal. Most of this capital improvement program isn't radical change. The capital budget for next year is, let me back up and at least do this is where we are. We are here. This is our second CIP workshop, and the CIP public hearing and adoption will be on the 27th, preliminary adoption will be on the 27th of this month. Of course, the CIP includes the capital budget, which is next year's capital projects. That's part of the operating budget and can be revisited by the council as we get into the operating budget. The process is designed to make sure that we deal with the long-term stuff, at least put down a marker on the short-term stuff, and then as we go through the operating budget, that short-term marker can be moved if necessary. The 6-year program that we're proposing is about $15 million greater than last year's. The change here is mostly due to about a $9 million increase in the school facilities project and a $3.5 million bond that's being proposed for some municipal infrastructure programs, which I'll describe in just a bit. The 1-year program is $1.83 million. This is an increase of 1.3. Is this that can't be correct, Zach? That's not correct. This year's capital budget, and I have to apologize, the slide deck that we're working from is a recaptured, recouped slide deck because I was working on this afternoon and the computer crashed. But the operating budget, or the capital budget that we're working on for next year is the $1.83 million. The increase is approximately, can you pull it as? We'll get that number for you. The increase that we're looking at here is driven largely by the need to do a revaluation of our property. State law requires that we go through and we revalue our property every 3 years. This year, we've got a $300,000, $324,000 revaluation bump in spending. If we take that out of the capital budget, then the capital budget general fund request for next year is actually lower. It's 3% lower than what was requested for just capital projects last year. We are above what we had requested last year because we have to do the revaluation and there's really no other place to tap other than the CIP.
Just for record, that $343,000 figure is the amount of the
that makes sense. The one is a stray one.
And this capital improvement is 196,990 over last year's with that 343.
Okay. There. The thing to note about the $3.5 million bond request is that last year we had requested $500,000 to do some roads resurfacing. We were proposing that would be done as a bond. We are now proposing to take that number all the way to $3.5 million. There's been some moving of things around. But the idea here is to accelerate some of the resurfacing, to deal with the Matunic seawall, to deal with some bicycle and pedestrian projects that have been identified by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and to make sure that we're in a position where, as things shift, we're going to be able to put more money into the road resurfacing program. The other item that we are proposing in that total of $6.5 million bond for municipal projects is the radio improvement program. I'm already beyond my slides. So we're looking at an increase of $450,000 to accelerate improvements as well on the recreation facilities over at Old Mountain Field, and to make some improvements at the boat ramp, the community boat ramp down at Marina Park, and the town beach. $75,000 at town beach, $300,000 at the boat ramp, and do you have the figure for Old Mountain Field handy? But Terry will be up, and she'll $425,000 for the bonded portion. One of the big things that we're proposing here in this capital improvement program is a partial shift of the revenues. Historically, revenues have been taken from the real estate conveyance tax. Those funds have been made available for open space. We're proposing that those funds be split, that the revenue that historically has gone to open space acquisition alone be divided in half, and that half of it be made available for capitalizing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We've also upped the estimated revenues from the real estate conveyance tax by $10,000, and we're proposing that those $10,000 be put into a village infrastructure program. The idea that we've outlined in the CIP is that village infrastructure program would be a matching grant program. We don't want to be in a situation where we've got a pot of money that everybody's fighting over. We want to be in a position where folks who are willing to make a commitment to the improvement of their neighborhoods can come and tap the fund for matching grants. We don't want to be in a situation where, one village is capturing all the funds and not really making the effort themselves. If folks are stepping up, we want to be there to help them bring projects to fruition. And I think that this village infrastructure program is the way to go. Just a broad overview of some of the smaller items in the capital improvement plan that we will touch on. I just want to make sure that we have some markers down here. Capital projects associated with the senior services program, $60,000 in the capital budget. The neighborhood guild is $1.1 million for building improvements from the guild fund. Water projects funded through the water fund are proposed at $139,000. That is correct. It's $139,000. And projects related to wastewater infrastructure are proposed at $610,000. These funds are self-sufficient. These are not general funds, and these are not taxpayer-funded projects. Nonetheless, they're important infrastructure, and they are covered in the plan. Fair share development fees is another important policy piece, high-level policy piece that we cover in this CIP. As the council knows, in June of 2017, the school facility funds, the fair share fees being collected to support the debt on the construction of school facilities was ceased. Now, we have not proposed yet that those fees be reinstituted. This is an issue that we're going to have to talk about, because we know that we're looking at serious debt service on school infrastructure, and these fees are designed for just that purpose. The question really is, what should those fees be, and do we want to send the signal to housing developers that this is our approach to financing the school improvements that need to be made? Are we going to ask developers to pony up, or is there, and if so, what are we going to ask them to pony up? Or is there a good, sound reason for attracting development without We're not putting this up as a barrier to development and hoping that that encourages more. It's an open question. We have not come to a final conclusion, but we have not proposed increasing school fair share fees. On the other hand, we have not seen the suspension of fair share fees associated with recreation projects. And while the fund balance for those projects is healthy, we are proposing incurring new debt for additional recreational facilities, and we have recommended that we not sunset those fees. Last year, we had talked about the possibility of sunsetting them. There's an argument to be made that, again, the fund balance there is healthy, but we've got projects. We've got large projects that need to be taken care of. We are not recommending sunsetting the fair share fees associated with recreation at this point. I think that's going to get us to the point where we can answer questions about the big picture stuff, and then we can have folks come up and describe their individual programs.
And any questions for Rob after that?
Rob, I got a few questions on the fair share development fees. Prior to suspension that occurred in 2017 related to the school construction, what were those fees and what amount?
We'd have to go back. I've never been involved in calculating those fees. The schedules are in the capital, the prior schedules are in the capital improvement plan from last year. I don't know that we published it this year. I'd have to get you the number.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I think we can move into the department
Great.
specifics.
So I think we should just go right down the list and start with the pay-go. Start with Terry. Come on up. Yeah, I can. All right, so.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to present the Leisure Services Capital Improvement Program for 2021. I'll run through the slides, and feel free to pose questions as I go, or if you want to wait till the end of the slides presentation, that's fine as well. Next slide is fine. We've got a total of $132,990 proposed for the pay-as-you-go programs for park rehab and maintenance. We've got 6 projects that are in the budget this year. We've certainly got balances for other projects during this year that we're working on as well. And as you know, the 2021, every year we add generally maintenance projects for upkeep of our existing parks and facilities. So the first project is Brousseau Park, and it's for, if you can move, yep, for the replacement of the lights at the tennis courts. They'll be replaced, the fixtures will be replaced with LED lighting, obviously much more efficient. Hopefully will reflect a downturn in our electricity costs, and the current lighting there was installed when the park was built, basically in I think it was the mid-90s for Brousseau. So they've certainly lived their life cycle, and we are looking to replace those to be more efficient. So, and it's heavily used as well. Brousseau's a popular park, particularly for tennis. In terms of the Marina Park long-term project, as you know, this has been in the capital plan for several years. We've systematically kind of gone through improvements that we could make with limited funding in terms of repaving the parking lots, upgrading some of the park area, repairing the dock, but we're at a point where we really need to replace that ramp. We're aware of that. We've been kind of getting through for the past 5 years with being able to dump gravel at the bottom of the ramp to level it out so that people could use it safely. We've got a total project cost for this at $260,000. This is for the boat ramp. And in FY 2021, we're requesting an additional $57,990. Bond funding in the amount of $75,000 has been proposed for the long-term 6-year plan for reconstruction of the boat ramp as well as full replacement of the dock at Marina Park. So the $75,000 of that, $57,990, would be allocated to the boat ramp reconstruction, which is the priority element of the improvement at Marina Park. Next, we have our beach improvements. Again, this is a moving target year after year. We're basically at the mercy of Mother Nature. We're looking to increase our reserve funding for beach improvements. That's either sand replenishment, that's potential relocation of the playground. As you know, it's the shoreline is creeping up to the playground. And other facility infrastructure improvements down the line with the pavilion, which we're hoping we can at least see another 10 years out of where it is now. But essentially, we're looking for additional funding of $10,000, and then there's also bond funding being proposed in addition to that, added to the beach program in order to build our reserve funds so that we can address a more long-term solution to maintaining what we have for the beach. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but it's certainly not, we have a quarter of a mile of the coast of which our neighbors on either side of us are up against the same problem, as you know. The photo on the right, you can see that's a recent photo. That's, I think, last month I took that picture, and you can see there's more cement footings that are exposed. We have piers that are exposed from the previous boardwalk that was 200 feet out into the water at one time back in the 90s. So we're looking at removing what's there and obviously keeping it safe. But it just gives you an idea. We're hoping in the spring we'll see a lot of that sand come back.
Just in case you haven't been down there recently, this in the lower left-hand corner is a concrete piling that has the rebar sticking out of it, and these are other concrete footings that have become exposed. The erosion's quite substantial.
Next, we have the Village Green Tennis Court resurfacing. This was originally authorized in the 1819 capital budget for $10,000. This current year, we went out to bid for court resurfacing here and at Brusso? At Brusso Park. The bids came in higher than anticipated. We requested allocation of the capital funds for the Brusso project first. It was in more need than the Village Green. So we're requesting $5,000 to build that fund back up in order to take care of that in 2021, resurfacing of the Village Green tennis court. We have the Park Irrigation Systems Reserve Fund, essentially. The Parks Division maintains in-house the irrigation systems. I believe there's 7 systems at various athletic fields that are in various stages of age and at times disrepair. We're trying to systematically look at those systems and replace components as needed in order to maintain those for the athletic fields in town. So another $10,000 is requested for that fund. We did have a recent repair, Curtis Corner? Was that this year? Major repair at Curtis Corner. So we have been tapping those funds in order to take care of those systems. Oh, that's okay. One new project that's in the pipeline for 2021 as a start anyway is a park tree management program. You may recall we've had several instances of trees going down at Old Mountain Field, along the bike path in various parts of town on park property. we've been pretty fortunate in that we've had no injuries, no significant damage, but there's clearly the need for a full assessment of the trees in our parks, and then a plan to either cut down or prune or replace going forward. So this, in 2021, we would like to contract out with a consultant to come in, actually assess those parks that have the highest need, which are the parks with the highest volume and the oldest trees. Old Mountain Field is clearly at the top of the list. So that's what we're proposing to do with a tree management program to get it started. Once we have an assessment, we may be back next year with obviously a longer-term plan for continuing the funding for this. Old Mountain Field. As you know, again, this is a project that's been in the pipeline for at least 4 years now, particularly focused on replacement of the restroom facility. The total project cost is $550,000. That's the long-term program. We've got a reserve fund of $200,000. We're seeking bond funding of $300,000. We're focused primarily in 2021 on trying to complete a revised master plan and get the restroom and concession building replaced as we move forward. I do anticipate that there will be other elements of revisions at Old Mountain Field. It's our oldest community park. It's certainly well used. I think we can look at a lot of options for improving it overall for the community. We've got other planned renovations already of the baseball infield, as well as the safety netting around the back of the backstop along either baseline. We do have an application in with the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management for a recreation development grant. If you recall, you approved submittal of that a couple of months ago. If we're able to get that, that's only going to help us move this along more quickly, but fingers crossed, we'll hope to grab that funding if we can. The equipment acquisition and replacement program, total requested budget is $140,000. We have 3 items this year proposed to our replacements. One is a new machine. First, we've got a dump truck with a plow to be replaced. Obviously, you see our trucks on the road. We cycle them out in terms of their age and life cycle, essentially. We're proposing one new dump truck replacement, and obviously that will have a plow. It's used year-round. We have a 12-foot mower. That's a tri-deck mower. This is proposed funding for $30,000, and that is a second phase of the funding. These mowers run about $60,000. We will replace a 2012 John Deere mower that's in use now, and those are used regularly, obviously, in 3 seasons out of the year by the park maintenance staff. And we also have new this year proposed a beach grooming machine. And if you flip to the next slide, yeah, okay. So at the bottom photo, you may be familiar with what this looks like. I think Narragansett has one for their town beach. Westerly Town Beach also owns one. We have in the past used basically an infield grooming machine on the town beach. It's just, and prior to that, we used a gator and dragged a chain link fence behind it to maintain the beach in season. This machine will allow us to better handle the day-to-day pickup. It will not only groom the beach, it picks up debris and seaweed as it goes. Now, when we get 3 feet of seaweed in the corner by the trailer park, obviously this machine is not capable of that. But if we can at least maintain more regularly the seaweed influx, which, as you know, it's hit or miss. It shows up and then it goes away. We do our best to remove it with backhoes and tractors, but with this machine, we should be able to more efficiently maintain the town beach so that regardless of when a patron shows up, they'll have hopefully the same experience as long as the sun's out. So that's what we're proposing for the town beach. And then for our senior services program, we typically have obviously a 6-year program. For the long term, we have $283,000 budgeted. There is detail in the narrative, the capital narrative. It hasn't changed very much. We're focused on a number of different improvements of infrastructure, interior and exterior of the 2 facilities, daycare and senior center, and replacement of the senior van. This year, for the 2021 budget, we are proposing $50,000 be allocated for the exterior painting and staining of the senior center building. It hasn't been restained since it was constructed. It's 20 years old, so it's time. And we're also requesting $10,000 be allocated for the senior van replacement as well. The van is a 2011, I think, and so we will be looking to replace that. We have a backup van. That one's much older, and what we would propose is trading in the oldest, using the current one that we use now as a backup, and then replacing this. But we've got a number of years to go before we have enough funding. And as a point of information, this funding, as Rob had mentioned, it goes into the Senior Fund 304. It gets budgeted in the operational budget, and it then also becomes part of some of what is allocated out to the town of Narragansett for their contribution to senior center operations. So that's how we fund this program. So there is a piece that comes out of it comes from the general fund allocation to the senior budget annually. That is the pay-as-you-go portion of leisure services. Do you have any questions that I can?
I have a question regarding the tree management. The town is working on, I don't know if we've hired a new arborist yet, but we did allocate money for an arborist truck. So I'm just wondering if that's something that we need to include or make that part of their job.
So, yes, the town has an approved arborist position. We've made an attempt to hire an arborist. We were very close to having an arborist, but that recruitment has not yet been successful. So we are continuing to look for an arborist who can begin to deal with the town trees along, the roadways and this sort of thing. Whether this is an activity that the arborist from DPS can handle is an open question. What Terry's looking to do initially, though, is just an inventory of the trees in the parks. She's trying to figure out here, what is it that we've got that needs to be addressed? And while that's a very unique kind of study. It's a once you go in, you look at all of the trees in the main parks, you identify the problems. An arborist could do that. This will be done by an arborist, but it's not sort of another duty as assigned to a guy who's on the truck cutting trees and planting trees along the roadway. This is a very unique activity. This is a special study of the need for intervention, if you will, in the parks.
I would also add that we will do what we can in-house, as we always do. We have talented park maintenance technicians and recs on staff, and when we can, we obviously utilize our in-house resources as best we can. What we would be looking to do is hire someone to come in and assess the parks, and then honestly, I don't have a good handle on what if we're looking at. We have a 17-park system that would be a significant cost, but we would look to be prioritizing and doing the oldest parks first that have the highest volume of activity.
And it's very hard to know without having had someone go out and do the inventory and the assessment, but we have a lot of parks, we have a lot of bicycle trail, a lot of trees along the bike trail, a lot of trees in those parks. There will be a program here somehow. We know that we're going to have enough challenges to design a program around. The question is just where is, what are those issues? We've got to document them. And then once we know what the challenges are, we can begin to build the program. The first step is just assessing what the problems are.
Thanks, Terry. Any other questions?
Thank you.
While we're here, one of the things that I want to make sure that the council knows about the bond proposal that we've made for the municipal projects. We've got a lot of projects like the Old Mountain Field infrastructure improvement that have been, slowly getting toward construction for a lot of years. And as we were thinking through this CIP, it occurred to us that right now we're looking at the lowest bond rates, the lowest interest rates on municipal bonds that anyone can remember. Right now, municipalities are going out to market and they're seeing interest rates in the 2s, 2.6, 2.7. Those are really low interest rates. The cost of escalation for construction right now in Rhode Island is 6%. So if there's ever a time to borrow for these sorts of projects, it's now. We're putting money in the bank, and it's losing value. It is time for us to be thinking about borrowing some money for construction projects on our roads, things like the restrooms at Old Mountain Field, the boat ramp. These are perfect projects to take care of while money is cheap. Money is cheap right now. Whether money will be cheap next December is an open question. But if things hold, then it will have been the right thing to do. When we get to market, if we get to the point where money's no longer cheap, it no longer makes sense, we don't need to issue the bonds. But we should be pursuing debt for the purpose of improving our infrastructure rather than putting monies in a reserve that is literally losing value.
400,000. There's a matching, it's an 80-20 match, which we would have in reserve. We would have enough to work on replacement of the restroom and concession building. It's hard to know where we fall in terms of who else has applied. Many cities and towns apply for this funding, and we've been relatively fortunate to have received the West Kingston Playground grant, the grant for the bike path connecting the commons. But, I think this is a worthwhile ask. So, I don't think there's an announcement until almost March. So
I would also suggest that the way that this bond request has been designed is that if monies become free because we find money for the Matunic seawall or because monies become available for Old Mountain Field, what we would be doing is using the monies that are freed up from those projects to accelerate the road resurfacing project. It is literally tens of millions of dollars worth of road resurfacing projects that we've got in the queue. We could easily spend, we were talking to John this afternoon, easily spend $100 million doing transportation infrastructure projects in South Kingstown and do no project anyone would find objection to. There's just so much work out there that needs to be done. So again, we see infrastructure needs across the programs. We've designed one that a borrowing plan here that is meant to address all of those or touch on all of those. If we can shift, the shift is to the road infrastructure and the road resurfacing. And there's no problem with our sort of having too much money approved on a credit card. Again, if it becomes unwise to go to the bond market, we won't. If, on the other hand, money is still cheap, and we have money freed up from Old Mountain Field, the idea would be to put it into road resurfacing.
Rob, I don't know if you have this number off the top of your head, but with the current plan that we have, how long would it take for us to address? It's like a crazy number of years, right?
John's cogitating back there. What do you think?
And time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, come on up.
It'll be more money. You're going to have to start again. You don't need roads to get to the school.
And microphone.
Good evening.
All right. It's all yours.
So I guess we're on the next page. So public services were made up of engineering, streets and highways, the three enterprise funds, water, wastewater, and solid waste, and then the on-site wastewater division. So going quickly into, so for this is the proposed revenue sources for the upcoming budget. So we have pay-as-you-go of $463,000, and then of the bonds that we're talking about issuing, $167,000 would be designated to collector road, overlay and road improvements, another $167,000 to local, and we haven't specifically identified any roads because we don't want to say it's going to be this road and hopefully if the bond doesn't fail, but if we have the bond proceeds, that's what we're proposing to do. And we're also proposing in 2021-22, $166,000 towards Old North Road. We've had to defer Old North Road for a couple of years now. It's a long road. It's very expensive. We are working also with the university to try to get a drainage easement for the northern end because a lot of the road conditions due to the water sitting on the road. So if we're successful in getting the drainage easement, we want to get the drainage work done before the road's reconstructed. And then an additional $350,000 of the bond would be for pedestrian bike improvements. And the remainder of $3 million would be for the phase 2 of the seawall, which we have the approvals from CRMC for.
John, do you have any further details on what you're looking for in terms of pedestrian and bike improvements?
I mean, $350,000 is not going to go very far if you look at, whatever's possible. I mean, certainly signage, we talked, I think, initially about radar feedback signs. I think if we start installing those in one area, there's going to be a big interest town-wide for those.
Right. Just to put some numbers to that, those signs are running $5,000 to $6,000 a piece. 10 of those in town is already a big chunk of money.
And typically, where you'd put one, people would want them in both directions. So you're really talking $10,000 to $12,000 in a given neighborhood. So it would add up fast.
Have we identified the roads for which we would have those?
I think you can make an argument, probably every neighborhood can make an argument that we need them in our neighborhood. It's a town-wide problem. Speeding happens on every road in town, every town in the state, every state in the country. So one of the things we could possibly do is take a portion of that towards a study, and the study would identify what are proper traffic calming methods and what criteria would be necessary to make where they would make sense.
But the other sorts of projects that you're likely looking at are things like crosswalk improvements, repainting, signage along or near crosswalks at the intersections between the bike path and major roadways. A number of those intersections have been identified as signage deficient, if you will, by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee.
So, just thinking about Main Street as an example, that's a state road. I've always felt that the sidewalks or crosswalks are sometimes hard to see. But that's nothing that we can do as a town other than ask DOT to address that, correct?
We can ask that through the tip. I mean, to me, and we're going to, the first, I think, test case for this is going to be the 138 improvements when they get built, is they have bump outs at the crosswalks. I think that provides a visual that the road next down where the crosswalk is. The only downside is usually start losing parking spaces to balance. I think bump outs would be very beneficial, but again, that's something that'd have to go through RIDOT. So what's scheduled for the upcoming year is Torrey Road at $242,000. Prior to that resurfacing occurring, the council may recall we awarded Narrow River stormwater improvements, so we have under drain systems. I think anybody who's been down Torrey Road in the wintertime, there's actually breakouts of groundwater in the middle of the road. So we're going to try to under drain and get that water off the road before we reconstruct it. The second item is Suez finished their main extension on River Street, and as part of that, they're required to repave the lane of travel that they disturbed for the main extension. And on a separate but related note, RIDOT this year got a law passed that requires utilities, when they do utility work, to do the entire width of the road. So what we have coming to the council for the next council meeting is an order of advertisement to mirror what RIDOT's doing. So when there's a main extension down a road, it's just not that travel lane. We're going to require the full width. And if we did that for this road, Suez would have been required to do the entire width, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense to do one lane and not do the other. So that's why we have the second lane in for the upcoming fiscal year. Stedman Court is it's a small dead-end road that had a main extension done a number of years ago. The contractor who did that unfortunately went bankrupt, so we secured his performance bond, which will pay for a portion of that. It's a very short section, but we wanted to get that portion done. And then, the big project, Matuna Beach Road, that's looking from phase one towards the Matuna Trailer Association. That's the latest scour hole that's within 10 feet of the pavement.
Again, this project's ready to go. It's got all of the approvals necessary, so this is a shovel-ready project. If we can find grant money, we're all over it, but we have tried now 3 times, and we've been shot down 3 times.
Right, and the last one was the infrastructure bank.
We do have an upcoming meeting with the Infrastructure Bank to look at possibly some other finance method, but again, if it's borrowing, it's borrowing. It's not necessarily going to be any better for us to borrow from the Infrastructure Bank than...
Yep. And one of the other, major road improvement projects, which is the state's going to be handling, is Tower Hill Road. So hopefully that's going to
happen
soon.
Construction this spring. It's
Right.
been awarded already. Again, we talked earlier about Collector Road. There's just an allocation of $167,000, same for local roads, and then the $350 for the bike and pedestrian safety. So each year, we're required to reserve funding for TNBL improvements. Now, River should be under construction here as soon as the weather breaks and be completed by June 30th. Once that's done, we're going to be then at this point, we think, going on to Green Hill Pond to have the stormwater attenuation study done, and then once that study's complete, then go to construction for Green Hill Pond. I will note we did receive notice last week from RIDEM about a closure on I'm going to say the middle portion of Point Judith Pond. And on the town's South Kingston side, it's pretty rural, and we have no drainage outfalls, but on the east side we have, I think it's Harbor Island, Great Island. So I think because of what shellfish closures there, DEM, I think, may be encouraging us more to do Point Judith Pond than do Green Hill Pond, but our focus has always been Green Hill Pond is the next TMDL project.
John, speaking of Green Hill Pond, I'm assuming the DEM still thinks it's a bad idea to put a breachway in at Green Hill?
They haven't embraced it, but hey, I'm an advocate for it, and I think time will tell. Okay. So again, you got two impairments with Green Hill Pond. One is fecal coliform, which there's a TMDL for, and even in DEM's TMDL document, they identified a majority of the sources for fecal is non-anthropogenic. It's wildlife and waterfowl. It's not human-related. Nitrogen's a different story. There's no TMDL for nitrogen, but the primary source for nitrogen is septic systems. So, I mean, if a breachway would hopefully achieve, be effective for both of those, but nobody seems to be too enamored with a breachway. And I mean, let me back up. A breachway wouldn't be like what you see in Charleston. We're talking like a box culvert with gates on either end that you can open and close, and that you would be able to walk over it. It's completely different than what most people envision with the Charleston breachway. So I think that's yet to be decided what we're going to end up doing down there. And then if you back up, so each year we're required by permit, the CRMC is sent to replenish the sand in front of the seawall. I think this is the third year, Paul. Do we do 3 years? So it runs us on average. We're less than $20,000 a year. I think last year was only a couple $1,000. But so we replenish that just before Memorial Day each year, and we'll be required to do that in front of the next phase once it's constructed. And for highway, we put in fuel upgrade, but it's really a placeholder depending upon each year what we need to do. It may be fencing, it may be fuel, it may be the salt bomb, but we try to allocate funding each year, depending if improvements need to be made that are beyond what's typically operation and maintenance expense. So, any questions for road improvement? Before we go on to equipment. So, in the upcoming budget for highway, we have a large dump truck. We just replaced one. We have 2 large dump trucks. These are 10-wheelers, primarily assigned down to like the south end where we have a lot of drifting and up near the turf farms, because we need that extra mass to get the snow off the road. So because of the expense, we have to do the large dump trucks over a 3-year period. This will be year 1 of 3. We also have proposed a medium dump truck. We can buy it in a single year for $185,000. Paul, how many mediums do we have? How many medium dump trucks? Do we have 9? 7? 9. We have 11 sanding routes, so all these trucks all have sanders on them. And then we also have a pickup truck scheduled for replacement, and the payloader, again, another expensive piece of equipment. We're in year 3 or 4 for that to be replaced. Unfortunately, with the dump trucks, they're primarily used for the wintertime, and because of the corrosive environment, when we trade them in, they don't have a lot of, they have 60, 70,000 miles on it. And when we get a new vehicle in, we do coat the underside with it's like a Cosmoline material to try to protect the fuel lines and the brake lines and the frames, but we wash them down after every storm, but it is a very, very corrosive environment with the salt. Any questions on highway equipment? So water fund, both water tanks, again, a placeholder for tank repairs. When we say tank repairs, primarily paint repairs to the coating system. Both tanks were blasted and epoxy coated with a 2-part polyurethane system back in 2005, 2006. So every once in a while we need to make spot repairs to that system to keep them from rusting on the outside. The inside's in good condition. Pump station infrastructure, we are down the south end of town. We have steel security doors. They rust. They need to be replaced. That's what we're proposing for the $12,000. Leak detection reserve. Leak detection is always a struggle for us. My analogy is like painting the Newport Bridge. Once you get done, you got to go back and start over again. We had a leak detection firm come in and look at both water systems, I believe 3 years ago, and they found no leaks. And of course, we've made repairs since then to services that end up leaking. So we do want to try to continue to fund a reserve so the next time we have to go out for comprehensive leak detection, we have that ability. The last time we did it sonically with acoustic equipment. Now there's technology, from what we understand, where they actually put helium into the water system, which is an inert noble gas, and you have equipment that can detect the helium. It's much more precise than the acoustic methodology. So when the time comes to go back out for leak detection, we may be looking for the helium type of technology. And we still keep a placeholder in for water quality and disinfection. After the Suez fecal exceedance, boil water order 2 years ago now, we're struggling to deal with disinfection. One of the problems is Suez has now increased their residual chlorine, and when you increase residual chlorine, you end up getting high disinfection byproducts. We're starting to see that now. So it's a balancing act. You want a high disinfection rate, but not high enough where you start to have elevated disinfection byproducts. So we're still, again, allocating funds if we need to do more on the water quality studies or equipment for the water system. And then leak detection. I'm sorry, I had a duplicate slide for leak detection. Rolling stock equipment. So we have, this is actually not for the water fund. We do fund administrative vehicles for my office through the different divisions. We have 2 vehicles. This is one of them that are deadline right now, so we need to replace. We're going to eliminate one and get a new SUV to replace one of these 2 vehicles. We also, as an annual contribution for maintaining the office building, we're asking for $10,000. This is primarily going to be earmarked, I think, for new rooftop units, again, because we're so close to the water. They take a beating with the salt. And then again, an allocation or stipend for GIS upgrades for whether it's GPS equipment or anything that associated with the GIS system. So that was questions on water. Okay, moving right along into wastewater. So here's our annual explanation on how wastewater is funded. We're a regional partner, with managing regional partner with South Kingston, Narragansett, URI. So any improvements that happened at the treatment plant are shared by the 3 regional partners based upon their flow to the plant. So if we replace a pump at the plant, South Kingston pays 37%, Narragansett about 45%, and URI about 17%. Conversely, Silver Lake Pump Station and Kingston Pump Station do not have any Narragansett flow. So for Kingston Pump Station, URI pays a lion's share because 85% of the flow goes through Kingston. And because there's more flow that comes through Silver Lake from South Kingston users, we pay 67% and URI pays 32%. So, and those percentages change each year based upon what the actual flow is. But those facilities are metered, and that's how we allocate capital costs and operation costs to each regional partner. So for the treatment plant, wastewater fund, we've got the first items is a macerator, a portable macerator. So the problem we see is these disposable wipes that are supposedly disposable really aren't disposable. We encourage people to put them in the landfill, not in the wastewater, but so they do entangle the pumps. This is a portable pump that we would take around to our small pump stations to try to macerate any of those wipes or rags that get in there. And because this is a local pump station, it's fully funded by South Kingston, Narragansett, and URI do not have any expense for this capital item. Silver Lake Pump Station, these are large, high-capacity pumps. This is one of the remaining ones that is scheduled to be replaced. It was, constructed back in the mid-'70s. And again, $160,000 is the estimated expense. Since South Kingston has 67% of the flow, our share would be about $108,000. Another treatment plant component is these are waste sludge pumps. These return some of the sludge that is precipitated out of the flow back to the dewatering operation. Again, $50,000. South Kingston shares about $18,000 of that because it's about 37% is our flow. The septage building, again, dates back to when the treatment plant was constructed in the mid-'70s. We do have, this is a degritting machine, so when septage comes in, there's always grit and sand and material in it. This removes that grit and sand so it doesn't damage the pumps in the treatment plant. And again, we're looking at about $75,000 for that component to be shared by the regional partners.
Just one question on the portable macerator. What kinds of expenses are we seeing in terms of wipes getting into the pumps?
It's more labor-related. We have to go down, take the pump out, take it up, disassemble it, reassemble it. That's usually the problem. It's very time-consuming. The next item is a treatment plant project. We have 4 clarifiers at the treatment plant. This is one of the original. We had 2 that were built originally, and then we added 2 more. I'm going to say it was probably in the mid-'90s, and that increased the capacity of the plant from 4.13 million gallons a day to up to 5. This is one of the original clarifiers. It's a mechanized piece of equipment that removes, this is one of the final settling processes at the treatment plant to remove any suspended solids and sludge. It just needs to be rebuilt at this point, so we're looking for $100,000 for that project to be shared by the 3 regional partners. The next item is the interceptor. So we have a large diameter interceptor that goes all the way from Upper College Road and 138, comes down 108, and then goes through like Palisades, and then at that point it follows the Saugatucket River. And it was pretty miraculous how they got that constructed originally, because it's below the elevation of the river. So because it's below the river, we're under the hydraulic influence of the river, so we want to make sure that there's no leaks in that pipe, because if there is leaks, we're treating river water just as we would wastewater. So this project is proposed to inspect, and then if we find a leak at that time, repair that leak through a third-party contractor. And that would be shared by URI and South Kingston based upon the Silver Lake flows. And then lastly, this is one of our older pickups that is in need of replacement. That goes between, that one primarily serves at the treatment plant. That's why it's split 3 ways between the 3 partners. So that's any questions on wastewater?
I have just a quick unrelated question. When we took the tour of the wastewater facility, I think it's called cakes or some kind of, what is it called? The stuff that they take out at the very end and bring to the landfill?
Yeah, so we get rid of sludge in 2 methods. We have what's called a rotary thickener that gets the sludge up to about a 7% consistency. That gets incinerated by Synagro. And then we also dewater up to about 22%, and that goes to the landfill. Now, we've got scheduled, it's under design right now. That's a 2-meter belt press. I don't know if you saw the belt press or not.
Don't remember.
It's to replace that with what's called the screw press. We actually screw the water out of the solids, and that gets if it's dry, you're paying less. So that's under design right now.
Right, and the cost went up, right, for...
So cost has gone up about $10 per ton every year. I think we're up to $130 this year at Resource Recovery. I think it's going to $140 for next year. It goes up about $10 a ton. It's done that probably for the last 5 years.
And we would never be allowed to incinerate our own?
To build an incinerator would be cost prohibitive.
Okay.
The Synagro incinerator is in Woonsocket. I don't want to say the only game in town. Cranston has their own incinerator at the Cranston treatment plant, but that's a privatized facility. And both of those incinerators, from what I understand, are pretty much at capacity right now. There's really not any extra capacity.
So how much weight do we get by going to the screw dewatering system?
How much weight do we save?
Yeah.
We're probably going to save, I'm going to say, we're going to probably go from about 22% solids up to maybe like 27%. So, yeah, it's not, it's going to save, but it's not, we're not going to cut it in half. I'll put it to you that way. Thank you. Right.
Chief, come on up. Public safety is 5. Nope. We have the, you only want 50. 511? It's all you, Chief. Red light.
Can you hear me now? Joe Jabers, Chief of Police. I feel embarrassed. We're only asking for a total of $50,000 spread out over 3 programs. So, I know. We don't have any slides, but a lot of it is things that I'm certainly not an expert in. Our 3 components are computer systems, long-term proposed budget, 6-year term of $97,500. This fiscal year, we're asking for $17,500 for that expense, which involves network and firewall replacement and server replacement of $50,000 each. Our second request is for $12,500 for our communication system. That involves, over the 6-year term, it will be $122,500, but this year we're asking for the $12,500. This is money reserves for the voice recording system, upgrading our telephone system, upcoming projects that might come along for that particular communications equipment.
So this is really telecommunications. This is not the radio system. This is just telecommunications.
Right, exactly. Phone systems, voice recording, and internal CCTV equipment, which ours is getting on the old side. Those are the cameras that we can use in the dispatch area to view all of the inside of not all of the inside, but most of the important features inside the police station, such as the cell block area. Also covers the outside cameras, which we have to have the impound under surveillance and the parking lot.
So the request of $12,500 is for reserve contribution toward a project with a total price tag of $120,000.
That would be $122,500 over the 6-year term. And lastly, the public safety building, we're requesting $20,000 in reserve for that. In FY21, we're looking to replace 2 chillers, which are used in the loop system for cooling the building. The 2 chillers that are in there now are 20 years old. The new chillers will be much more efficient, and I think Mark is the expert on that, but we're looking to replace 2 of those this fiscal year, FY21. And that's basically all we have. Any questions?
No questions.
Pretty inexpensive.
This year, anyway. This year.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Craig here? Craig, come on up.
Good evening. Craig Stanley, Director of EMS. Our request is kind of like the Chief's, not as much as the others. We're requesting a total of $122,000, and that is $37,000 of that is to replace cardiac monitors in the Lucas device, and the other is $80,000 for a placeholder for replacement of a transport unit 3 years down the road. First $80,000, and that's pretty standard. We're not expanding other than that. It's pretty. The monitors replacing are 2012, and they're due to be replaced. And same with the Lucas devices.
Pretty basic.
Yeah.
Pretty basic.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laurel isn't here tonight, right? The only project that we've got for next year in the libraries, actually, Mark, you may want to come up and these you are actually the one on the hook for actually executing these. Yeah, you might as well while you're here. So we'll deal with libraries and buildings.
Mark Russo, Facility Superintendent. So at the libraries, we have, it's hard to see. Just a $15,000 for a facility study to up in the old main reading room, which is to remove that false ceiling there, which would expose beams much like these, and be able to open up that balcony that's not used right now for more use, such as study carrels or so forth, because right now they're right in the middle of the libraries, and it's very noisy. So, but that study will go into best use for that space.
All right, you want to jump
to the town hall. Much like the chief, it's it's embarrassing. It's $98,000 total.
Don't be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Does that include air conditioning?
It does. It does for the clerk's office. You got to replace the oldest unit on the roof. But with this, it's for this facility, the replacement of the storm windows in this building, in this room. I was just sitting back there when the wind blows. It was a breeze coming through that window, so they need to be taken care of. They're 30 years old when this was refurbished, along with the exterior painting, and continue on with the roof cresting rehab outside up on the second story. And we also have some roofing that's been blown up out in front here that we've had to do a quick repair on. Also, it's going to replace a pickup truck that I use. It's an 11-year-old truck that, quite frankly, is costing us a couple $1,000 a year to keep on the road. So with the new pickup truck, we'll be able to continue on with the services.
any special equipment on the truck?
Comes with a snowplow. It's going to be completely outfitted with the snowplow lighting and emergency lighting radios. And it's going to have the lift gate in the back, because right now I have to borrow a lift gate from the highway department in order to move materials that are too heavy for us to lift off the ground. So, but that's it.
It's a working truck.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, did we miss a fire alarm, or was that?
Yeah, Lance, come on up. We jumped. We jumped because. Sorry. All right. Here's an interesting project. The big story, and Lance will tell us what's in there for the capital budget for next year, but the big story on the fire alarm is that fire alarm is sort of mutating into the unified communications, public safety communications program for South Kingstown. We've been working very closely with Union Fire District and Kingston Fire District to try to bring together the three entities so that we're not buying pieces of radio communication systems, as has been the practice in the past. Any marriage is a matter of learning and giving and taking, and we're not to a perfect collaborative relationship yet, but I think we're getting there, and I think that over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to see this division take on the full role and responsibility of managing communication systems, the infrastructure, the radio towers, the microwave devices, the relays, the transponders, and the radios. I think that we're going to get to the point where we'll be able to see the purchasing power of all three entities brought to bear when we go out to bid. I think we're going to see the benefits of just coordination. As the council knows, as members of the public know who've been paying attention to our discussions over the last year and a half on this issue, right now our public safety radio network is not adequate. We're using an 800 megahertz system that we picked up largely because the state was providing some incentives to municipalities to join that radio band, but it doesn't have good coverage in South Kingstown, particularly in the southwestern corner of town. We have emergency personnel, firefighters, police, and EMTs who go into buildings and cannot speak to command outside of the building or back at headquarters. We have public safety officials who go into the building and are blind to the world. And it's not a good situation. We have to address that. The 800 megahertz frequency is so fragile that things that you wouldn't think interfere with the signal do interfere with the signal here. We find that when a police officer or a firefighter is in a pine grove, the pine tree needles fracture the signal. The 800 megahertz radio signal is not getting to them underneath pine trees. We have to switch the system. We have to improve the coverage, and we have to make sure that the folks we're asking to go into burning buildings and to help folks who are down on the kitchen floor can get the information they need or can get the assistance they need to do that job safely. Right now, we have stories of EMTs who go into buildings to assist victims who bend down to assist the person who's on the floor and lose the radio signal. They have to get up and go over to the window to be able to communicate. It's not good. It needs to be fixed. We started looking into what it would cost to build out a new microwave network for the town. We've had a study done. The study has come back. A design has been settled on, but the price tag that we anticipated of $800,000 is not what the national firm that came in to do this study has told us it's going to cost. They've told us that it's going to cost $2.2 million. Actually, I take that back. That's our share. Total cost of the project is $3 million, with contribution from UFD and KFD. Our portion would be $2.2 million. Now, we've also gotten some signals from the contractor, the consultant who did this study, and others who've gone through this exercise in other municipalities around the country, that it's really hard to price the product. So we are possibly high when we come in at $3 million, but we have no basis other than the consultant's written, signed, report to go on. We can go to market as soon as we've got funds available, and we can find out if it's cheaper than that, and we're hoping it's cheaper than that, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be free. So that's the biggest, that's the biggest item we've got in this bundle. It's a $2.2 million municipal expense to build out the radio network to ensure that it's working for everybody out there doing some of the most dangerous work we ask municipal employees to do. The other benefits that we will see here, though, are that the entire municipality will be able to use the network once it's built out. Public services will be able to use the network for general communications. The school department, which currently cannot communicate by radio from school to school, will gain that ability, and we'll see even the recreation department be able to eventually come on board and use the same network. So we should see some savings, and again, increase the purchase power when we go out for things like radios that are supported by this network. Those are savings in the out years. They say you gotta spend to save, right? We are sort of in that boat right here. And we don't have any good options. There's nobody who's got a radio network that we can, sort of tap into. The problem is that we don't have the microwave equipment where it needs to be. We thought for a while that the state had a solution to that hole in southwestern South Kingstown, but it just didn't come to fruition. And we can't sort of wait around and hope that maybe the state finds a different solution someday, because they've been asked, lots of efforts have been made, and it's also just difficult. What would have to happen is the state would have to construct a tower somewhere in Charlestown or South Kingstown, and the likelihood of that happening is not great.
If I may, Rob, this is all coming about at perfect timing. The dispatch consoles and consolettes that are in the back radio room are at end of life. The majority of the radios that the highway department's using in their trucks is coming to end of life. So this is the best time that this could actually happen. Yes, it is a big nugget, but there are things, the senior bus that Terry runs, the guy has to use a cell phone if he even has service. So there's quite a few things that happen. There's some case studies for you to think of. In December, Highway had 0 communications with their plow trucks because of the snow. They're on a VHF system. The one repeater's at the highway garage on Asa Pond Road. The snow was just too heavy and couldn't get out. So you have plow truck drivers in those conditions with no communication. Medics can't get out of some of the buildings like Peacedale House, South Bay Manor. Just this morning, Medic 2 went to a medical in the Flats, right at the Rotary. Couldn't talk to anybody. Police have issues in South End, which we know about, and penetration into buildings. There's many, many, many complaints from police on how poor that 800 system is in the South End. So the $2.2 million, that's including a lot of stuff. Structures at all the 5 sites. 3 sites are town-owned. There may be some real estate inside the water towers that we may not need structures at. Includes all generator backups and all radios being replaced in the town of South Kingstown. Just a quick number for you to chew on. It's 197 total radios for the town. That's police, EMS, highway, wastewater, water, senior bus, and Parks and Rec. So that's what's getting replaced.
Who owns that big tower on Shannock Hill Road? Is that
AT&T tower? That's you'll see it on that tower.
They won't.
It's the transatlantic cable tower.
Oh, okay.
That goes all the way.
They won't let you play on that. The security down there is insane. It's not it wasn't even on the radar for the company to look at. The 5 sites that you're looking at would be Public Service Building Tower, Victoria Lane, Mawtucket, Teft Hill, and the Narragansett Station 3, which we already have equipment on. And the 400 UHF system is proven to work. Fire uses it now. It has great penetration powers. It just has to be fortified or a little stronger with more repeaters. And other than that, the other discerning thing that the manager's already said, that the schools can't talk to anybody if there's an event.
So I will note that the 2.2 does not include a radio buy for the schools at this point.
They can be added on.
We actually are talking to the schools about what portion of this, if any, might be done as part of the school infrastructure project. Because the facilities need to be improved, whether any part of this can be a security component of the larger project. We're not going to get $2.2 million out of that, but they may be able to buy some radios and school-based equipment. Right.
All right, questions on the radio system? The last thing is the digitize, the 3505s that we have in dispatch now. What this equipment does is when there's a alarm via radio box or over the hardwire, which we're slowly moving off of, or any burglar alarm in town buildings, it goes through this device, and this device tells the police or fire where to go. They're done, they're just old. They can't be upgraded, so we have to go with the new Prism, which is a little more user-friendly. We can program that remotely. Working with the IT department, we'd be able to access that from our office. And that's also every box alarm in the town of South Kingstown or Berkeley will go through that device. Without that, nobody will be dispatched to any events. Questions? Thank you.
Is that everybody? Have we hit everybody? I'd like to have Gene come up, though, and just describe the reval project, just so the council and folks know what we're doing there. Nothing fancy, just what are we doing?
I'm Gene Bouchard, the tax assessor. Every 3 years we have to do revaluations. We do two kinds of revaluations, full revaluations and statistical revaluations. Full revaluations require every property in town to be re-inspected and remeasured. Statistical revaluations do not require that procedure. The property values are adjusted based on what the market is doing at the time of the revaluation. Statistical revaluations, we receive 60% reimbursement from the state. Full revaluations, there is no reimbursement. These two projects that are coming up, and the full revaluation with an effective date of 12/31/21, and the statistical in 2024 is going to require us to put aside $450,000. Which we are requesting in 2021, $100,000. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what the two revaluations are all about.
Questions on the reval?
No questions? You're welcome.
All right. Any questions from the council on the overall presentation?
The one that kind of sticks out to me is our town manager's point on the fact that currently with construction, we have escalation every year, that it's actually cheaper to borrow money now to take care of some issues rather than putting money aside that's constantly being devalued. I think that was quite eye-opening.
Again, though, I want to point out that that's the snapshot we've got right now, and we're not suggesting to the council that we, begin. We're suggesting to the council we begin the process of getting the authority to go to market. We're not suggesting going to market. We're going to have to wait and see what conditions are when we're ready to go. And we're going to be ready to go once the voters have approved a bond and once we've been able to evaluate which ready-to-go projects, which shovel-ready projects we've got at that point. We've got a very long queue of infrastructure projects, as I say, $100 million worth of road projects, without ever beginning to do a project that someone would say was a waste of money. We've got huge needs in terms of infrastructure improvement.
I'd also like to just remark that we've been talking about trying to find money for affordable housing for a number of years. So I'm thankful that we've been able to sort of identify that real estate transfer tax is a good starting place. So thank you for including that. At this point, we've gone through item 2 here. So item 3 is other matters of interest and concern, which is opportunity for public comment. I don't have a huge public turnout tonight, but if there's anybody who would like to come and say a few words, now is that chance.
Please, come on in.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kruger. I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Collaborative, so I figured this was the right time to come on up and just encourage everybody to please think about using that real estate conveyance tax money towards our fund, towards the Affordable Housing Fund. There's been a lot in the news lately, sort of just highlighting where things are at with housing in Rhode Island and the fact that things seem to be getting more dire in terms of shortages and the challenges for really anybody who's below the median income at this point, and we see that a lot here in town. The Affordable Housing Collaborative is trying to look at a lot of different strategies. You know, there isn't going to be a one thing that's going to change this. There's going to be a lot of different strategies that need to be employed, and you've probably heard a little bit about what we've been looking at with the accessory dwelling units and maybe doing some tax abatement work there. But there are other things we do with the fund, like pre-development costs, rehabilitation or preservation of existing affordable housing that certainly still need investment, and we can't do them without some funding. So those are things that already exist that we need funding for. And then we're also trying to talk a little more creatively on the committee about what are some other opportunities we might have in the town to just have a really diverse array of ways of trying to create lots of different kinds of housing. But a lot of people who need smaller units, who need apartments, are really struggling to stay in town. So I thank you for considering this, and I think it will be useful to so many people in town. Thanks.
Just for the council's awareness, my understanding of the history of this trust fund is that it was established, 20 years ago, with an initial $10,000 capitalization. That money was spent 20 years ago. And there really was no money in the fund until fairly recently. A few years ago, the council made $100,000 available. Projects didn't actually deplete that account. So the council made those monies available for the study being done by Horsley Witten to reevaluate and make recommendations on how to rezone portions of the town for mixed use and affordable housing. This is one of the major projects we've got going right now that is going to help inform our rezoning efforts so that we can start seeing some serious development to sort of offset the costs that we're seeing being unmet associated with the school project and obviously all of the other municipal programs. This committee has done some incredible work. They've got some really great ideas on affordable housing that the council has seen and will be seeing in the weeks and months ahead. The contribution that they'll see from the real estate conveyance tax is not huge. It's a down payment. It's more than they've seen in the past, and it's a steady stream. So there's a benefit, but we're still only talking about $225,000 over the 6-year CIP. This isn't going to be the panacea. It's a good down payment, but we've got a lot more work that's going to have to be done here.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Any final points? All right. Well,
I'd just like to circle back to the bike and pedestrian safety pay-as-you-go monies allocated there. One of the things that it's been on our minds the last couple of years is identifying the roads for which we can target as putting things in place to calm speeding measures. I think maybe at the next council meeting we can direct the bicycle and pedestrian committee. I see the chairs in the audience tonight. To perform a study, identify those streets with the major activity for which we should target, and really focus on setting those up in place for those roads. We've talked about the last year or this past term for which I've been on the council, and we haven't done enough on it, and it is a real issue. But if we could set monies aside for a study or direct the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee to do this study, I think we'd at least get some benefit from it, and learn which roads we should identify as to target. So,
I will say that the committee has been hard at work, and while we don't have a final report from them, I'm holding a 7-page, 6-point font list of projects that they have in fact identified. They are in the process of finalizing a report to the council, but the work that they've been doing over the course of the last year and a bit is quite extensive, and I think is going to provide a good solid base from which John and the folks over at DPS can begin to identify the right projects and put those monies to the best possible use. So I think that we're in actually a pretty advanced stage of planning. It just so happens that the committee has been careful about not publishing the names of streets or intersections before they were certain that they had the best presentation possible for the council.
I also think that we can utilize the police help from the police department, because they're getting the calls. In the past, we were getting a lot of emails because we kind of know which roads are probably more prone to speeding. There's ones that are easier to speed on, I guess. But at the same time, we have to take a holistic look at all of our roads and trying to figure out how we can combat speeding in our town.
My view, I get the calls all the time, it really is one of the biggest problems folks in South Kingstown deal with. It's speeding. I don't know that a week goes by, and sometimes I get complaints, multiple complaints on a single day, but I don't think a week has gone by since I've been here where someone hasn't contacted me by phone or in a face-to-face conversation or by email saying, every time I go out, I put my life in the hands of a driver who's driving down my road. When I go to my mailbox, I feel like I'm taking my life. My life is at risk. We have a speeding problem in South Kingstown, and we're going to have to do a lot of things to make that better.
All right. Thank you. Any final comments? Then I think we can adjourn this meeting. It is 8:05. Thank you all for coming and for the presentations.